Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Sarah Harvey. We talk about anti-privacy and anti-patterns. Take it away, Sarah.
Hi, this is pretty cool because this is actually a pretty full room, so thank you all for coming. It's very clear that you really care about privacy and you find this talk interesting. I will try and not bore you to sleep because I'm formerly an academic and I talk about boring things. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about privacy. My name is Sarah Harvey. I assumed that my bio was going to be said before this, but it was not. So if you want to look up at my bio, you can look online instead. I'm currently a privacy engineer at Square with about 8 years of combined industry and academic experience in security and privacy. I know some of you are into Twitter. Please feel free to take pictures of my slides and tweet them. This is my Twitter. If you're not sure you're on the correct account, I posted this morning, right in preparation for this talk. So what is privacy? I think it's important first to establish kind of where I'm coming from in terms of my definition so that all of you are on the same page. I think that privacy is an extremely fluid term. It can mean a bunch of different things. So I'm going to try and narrow the scope a bit so that it's easier to see specific problems. And I'm also going to try and set up some assumptions so that we're not taken by surprise. I'm the speaker here, so you're forced to listen to whatever I say. So I'm just going to establish my set of assumptions and the rest of the talk about privacy. So we'll start off with, I think privacy is about the control of the data about an individual. So I can say that I'm more digitally private because I have control over my information about me. This is a far more rigid definition than what other people may think because it doesn't suffer from the subjectivity of what a person considers to be private or not. Specifically, privacy is different from secrecy. I can be private about my data, and it's not because I have anything to hide. And privacy is also different from anonymity. I can be private about my data, but still there might be, I might still have a presence or a persona on the internet, so it's not completely anonymous. I like to say that data privacy includes inferred or derived data. This includes behavioral data we derive from any existing data, any existing collection of data from an individual. An example might be information about my sleep schedule can be derived from when I turn on and off specific lights in my home. So this is not tangible pieces of data. So it's not name or email address. It might be things that you derive from that pieces of information. So maybe I use Gmail based on the fact that I use something at gmail.com. Let's assume privacy is not dead. I'm not here to debate this. Please don't ask me questions about this. I will also assume that everyone has a right to privacy, and so therefore they have the right to and the ability to maintain privacy. I'm not going to talk about ads. Please don't ask me questions about ads. So that's my whole spiel about privacy and assumptions. I feel that since my talk also contains the word pattern in it, I should define the word pattern. So what is a pattern? So a pattern, I come from software engineering. A design pattern is a software engineering phrase. It basically means it's a behavior you are using to solve specific problems because they're really effective. So therefore, an anti-pattern means that you have a really ineffective way of solving problems, as illustrated by this diagram, where I'm trying to go through the happy trees and the happy flowers, and then I end up into like a maze full of monsters. Okay, cool, we got the definitions out of the way. Let's talk about the state of the world today. We have breaches everywhere. Oh wait, that's not actually the breach I mean. These are the breaches I mean. They're data breaches. Bank loan and mortgage documents leaked online. Health records leaked online. Hotel records leaked online. We all remember Equifax. So what happens in these data breaches? One instance is we get credit card data stolen. I'm sure many of you have had credit card data stolen in some way where like Bank of America calls you and is like, hey, I saw you try and use like a ticket meter in New York. And I'm like, I just went to Safeway in California. That clearly did not happen. But this is a tangible piece of information. Social security number, that's a tangible piece of information. If I lose my social security card, I get identity theft. I get, people are filing taxes on behalf of me. People are opening credit cards on behalf of me. Equihacks. Let's not go into that further. Other tangible pieces of information might be, your name, your address, your phone number, your driver license information. They're just physical pieces of information that kind of describe you. So we saw all those breaches earlier. So when we see something like this, how do we react to that? It says here, Facebook says Cambridge Analytica harvested data of up to 87 million users. I use Facebook. Let me open Facebook. What was taken? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what data. My shit posts? Like, really? Like, do I care about this? Actually, I do, even though like it seems like there's nothing really interesting there to be taken. But the thing is that, you know, as a member of the general public, I don't understand what these news mean. But it still feels bad, it still feels wrong, it still feels like a violation, it feels like a breach of trust. Now we're gonna go and examine why that is the case. But to talk about why it feels wrong, we need to talk about the internet. So how do we use the internet? I don't know about you. I like to use the internet to search for pictures of cats. So you may have heard me talking about, okay, I like to use the internet to search. So what is search? I come from academia. I used to be a PhD student. I did information retrieval research, and I also did privacy research. For us in academia, search is an entire field of research. It's actually called, it's a part of a broader field called information retrieval. You're like, great, Sarah. So what is information retrieval? Simplified, an information retrieval system works as follows. We have a user, we have a system. The user makes a query to the system. I guess my transitions aren't working super well today. And then so after they make the query to the system, then the system makes a decision to return a particular document or a series of documents back. And a document here could be a web page, it could be images. Here's a web page. Here's some images. It could really be anything. It could be videos, anything stored in that information retrieval system. So you might say, well, that sounds awfully like a database. And you would be right, except for one key difference. Important in this system is the concept of relevancy. Now, when I say relevancy, that is not the same as accuracy. Relevancy is the measure of whether or not a document list is of interest to the user. So this means that relevancy is actually a subjective measure, because what I consider to be a relevant document might be different from what you consider to be a relevant document. So here we go, ranked system. So this user prefers the top document versus the bottom document. So in information retrieval systems, unlike database systems, present a ranked list based on what the system thinks is important to the user. So information retrieval has been around for a very long time. Since the 1800s, lots of stuff has happened, and now we're in the world where everything is creepy. So it's interesting to talk about, I think, what's really happened in the past 20 to 30 years. We're going to look at some things on the timeline compared to the state of computers and the state of the web, i.e. what everyone manages to see. So I'm going to take you back to the 90s. What happened in the 90s? This happened in the 90s. We probably saw that movie last night, hopefully. So computers looked a bit like this. This is an example of a computer back in 1990. We were already moving away from big hulking mainframes of the past. And computing power was increasing in computers were getting faster, way, way faster, but also the form factor was becoming smaller and smaller. This was the advent of personal computing. That's why you have a computer system that is personal to you on your desk. In 1989, you may have remembered, Tim Berners-Lee had proposed the idea of the World Wide Web. So by the 90s, we had a really, really early presence, internet presence, or web presence. For instance, the website for Space Jam, which, by the way, if you go to the web search for Space Jam, this is still up from 1996. However, information retrieval was becoming a pretty established field. At this time, there was already theoretical research into the idea of how to rank results, how to translate free-form queries, to the point that there were already two established conference venues, SIG-IR and TREC, that were created. So it's probably not a coincidence that it was in the 90s that we also start seeing information retrieval research getting more applied. Because up until this point, it was all theoretical. It's like, it would be cool if we had some system that would return documents in some way. But, computers would never become that fast. Computers will never become that interesting. There's no way to apply this. But personal computers are coming into being, so now we have applied research. Trek, for instance, is one of those applied conferences. You can think of Trek as basically a hackathon for researchers. Basically, researchers come together and brainstorm and try new tactics in search for about 2 to 3 days, and at the end, they all talk about it and being like, this is cool, this worked, or no, this was a total disaster. So by the mid-90s, then, we started seeing all the search engine companies coming into being. You might remember that Google was formed in 1998. And then, so all the search engines came into being. We have Google, but then by the early 2000s, we hit this max of what search and web was capable of, which you might remember happens to coincide with the dot-com bust. So the dot-com bubble came into being because search was starting to become to really take off, and then it hit this kind of ceiling, and then everything crashed. So at about the same time, coincidentally, in the research world, we got this paper starting to tie in some ideas about something called context in web search. So this is one of the earliest papers. It was published in 2000, and it was it started suggesting this idea of personalization and context as a way to improve web search. Why is that? That's because technology in 2000, all we could do to make search better was ask users to input their preferences. You may have remembered search in the 90s. It was like, click on the category you want to find the thing you want. It's like, I'm going to look in art. I'm going to look in autos. So this is Alta Vista. I don't even know, is Alta Vista around anymore? But there were bajillions and bajillions of search engines. It was like Hotbot, Alta Vista, Yahoo also at one point looked like this. And in fact, I think Yahoo still looks like this. So this is an example of what the search engine looked back then. And it turns out that the reason why we were trying to do that was because people are really bad at knowing how to search. If you read all of the personalization papers after the year 2000, you'll find that they all have the same introductory theme. Let's look at an example. This is one of my favorite pictures to describe my state of work at any given time. So I often use it for presentations like this one. However, I never remember where it's from, so I often start off by Googling, the guy with the map, and then that didn't help me at all. So let's revise our search. Maybe it's the crazy looking guy with the map. That still doesn't return anything, but I don't know why there's a weatherman up there. But then I remember, oh, it's a meme. That's why I like using it in slides. So I put the crazy guy with the map meme. And I'm like, that's the picture I want. You might remember that Google was revolutionary because it had none of those weird text links from before, right? You just had, if you notice all of those search things, it was just a text box with the buttons. And the reason why Google dominated was it got better at guessing what you were trying to do. It didn't need you to specify the preferences. You just had to revise your search a bit, and then you would get to this. There might be a hint, and here's a hint that you might be seeing as part of my slides. If you look at the trend of the success of any major information retrieval company, it's probably because they adopted personalization. I have said some words. What is personalization? Personalization is used to cater things just to you. Examples of personalization are like this. It's basically any kind of recommendation system you see, like Amazon or Netflix. That's a good example of personalization. It's based on building some kind of profile or context on you. So here Netflix recommends some videos based on what I've watched before and based on what I've not watched. So you can clearly see I have not watched The Office. And down here you can see Amazon recommends products based on what I've purchased or looked at or any kind of interest I've specified. So as you can see here, because I'm a security nerd, that's why there's not just one, but 2 YubiKey products in this list. Now, personalization is made up of 2 parts. The part you see here is individualization, i.e. catering to me personally based on my preferences. The other part is contextualization, which is the act of making a scenario have context. Let's see what contextualization might look like. I opened Google Music a few days ago, Saturday actually, because that's why it says Saturday. And here's some examples. It says, "Look, it looks like you're home on a Saturday. You must be really sad. Let's play some party music." Or you've listened to this in the evening. Maybe you want to listen to it again because last Saturday evening you were also sad and played this music. So the question is, how do they know? Why does this feel weird? The reason this feels weird, it's all this kind of behavioral inference about you. You didn't tell these systems that you wanted this kind of information. It just kind of made a guess for you. And implicit in this is that there's a lack of consent. It wouldn't be so terrible if the guesses were wrong, but the fact that the guesses are becoming better and better, it just seems really, really creepy. So it feels like another violation. This talk is all about anti-patterns, so I'm going to introduce the first anti-pattern. It's inference without explicit consent. Why are we inferring context without consent? Remember I talked about how we're bad at searching. It proposed, so the paper from 2000, it proposed, okay, people are bad at searching. What if we could automatically infer search context to help people find things? Well, it's the year 2000, so the ideas on inferring context are a little weird. Like, okay, let's look at the contents of what you're editing in Microsoft Word, or let's look at your email messages or research papers while you're editing a document in Emacs, or let's suggest content from the web based on like what you're reading or editing. If you notice all of this, this is kind of A, all short-term context, and B, you notice this is all client-based. This is a problem because it turns out none of this is implementable. Because remember, this is a machine from the 90s, and even in the 2000s, it still looked like this. And so, like, if you want to look at some speeds and some computing power around this era, processors at most was maybe gigahertz, but a lot of them were like around 500 to 800 megahertz. I couldn't find an article that talked about disk drives around this period, but apparently some sources say the largest disk drives of this era are about 100 gigs. Most consumers had disk drives in the tens of gigabytes. For context, Wikipedia, as of 2015, has, if it's compressed, entirely compressed, I think just text, it can be stored in 100 gigabytes, but uncompressed, it's in 10 terabytes. So we have this situation of we're well into the era of personal computing. Everyone has their own device, but trying to store the entire index of the web is basically impossible. So we can't do client things. Clearly what we need to do is move everything to server-based systems. So this is a prediction in 2000 that said, with the cost of running a large-scale search engine already very high, it is likely that server-based full-scale personalization is currently too expensive for major web search engines. However, advances in computer resources should make large-scale server-based personalized search more feasible over time. That is a scarily accurate prediction from 20 years ago. So it basically says personalized search would become feasible in the future when CPU and storage got cheaper. So to summarize, the research community decided pure search methods don't capture actual intent. Humans are bad at expressing intent. Context is valuable for deriving intent, and client-side methods are not powerful enough. So what did this look like on the outside? Well, by 2008, Google started rolling out personalization as an opt-in basis. You might have remembered this. It was called iGoogle. Before we started talking about iPods, I guess. So you could opt in to have this customization. And, people were really excited about this. Here's some guy on the internet writing about it. But then by 2012, as we moved more into the personalization world, some of that kind of control starts going away. And this guy gets pretty mad about it. He's like, look, I'm having all of this contextualization and personalization, and I'm not choosing to sign up for this. Google is just doing this for me. So we're talking about anti-patterns. Here's another anti-pattern, lack of transparency. It's not clear to the user what's happening behind the scenes. We also talked about how it's impossible to control. So anti-pattern number 3, erosion of control. I'm going to very awkwardly switch to a different topic here. Around the same time, we started seeing the democratization of machine learning techniques. And this is to do with the fact that the search community and the machine learning community are actually very intertwined. So for a lot of the information retrieval and machine learning, for a lot of information retrieval researchers, anytime they do a new breakthrough in information retrieval, it would coincidentally also make a breakthrough in machine learning. If you don't remember what machine learning is, here's a helpful diagram. Data goes into a mysterious black box derived by computer scientists, and results come out. Though the problem with this model is that it suffers from the garbage in, garbage out problem. Now, if we look at the fact that the applications of machine learning are just about everything, you end up with something like this. If you remember Tay, which was a chatbot created by Microsoft. And eventually, after talking, it would create responses based on how people talk to it. And then eventually it came up with this. So we come up with anti-pattern number 4. We have this trust in black box algorithms. We don't know what they're doing. They're producing garbage, and we don't know why. So let's recap. Personalization is maybe doable in today's resources. Personalization research has sped up machine learning development. Personalization research has democratized machine learning. Machine learning is useful for a lot of these products which require data. There's a precedent for collecting context data, and there's a general move to personalize everything. Let's talk about apps and services, how apps and services are today. This kind of scenario might be familiar to you. I'm trying to use a productivity app because I'm bad at productivity. It's called ClickUp. It has some means of handling things. But, it tells you it'd be really cool if, ClickUp could talk to other things. Now, ClickUp is a server-based system. Like, it's all the data is stored in some service remotely. It's not like on your personal device. So this might look familiar to you. It'd be great, if I could integrate with Slack, with GitHub, with Bitbucket, with Google Calendar. Look at all of these apps I can integrate with to make your productivity even better. Even within Gmail, I can click to get add-ons and integrate with a third party. Look at all of these products. I have no idea what any of them do. Let's go to Dropbox. Dropbox is a name I recognize. Let's see what happens if we try to integrate with Dropbox. You will see that Dropbox requires a ton of permissions, like trying to view your emails, manage your emails, connecting to some service. It doesn't even specify what it is. I'm connecting to an external service, and seeing and downloading all of your contacts. I have no idea why Dropbox needs to see and download all of your contacts. So anti-pattern 5, we now have a situation where we have an internet of integrations. So we have Internet of Things. I now propose Internet of Integrations. We want to personalize and make better products, but that cannot be done locally. So we do it on the server with all the features we like, prompting us to integrate with other services. So which brings us back to this. Oh wait, I mean this. So remember this article about how how do I understand this article? How do I understand the situation where Cambridge Analytica has taken all of my data, even though Facebook was somehow somewhere in between. Vox has this actually pretty good diagram and explanation of what happened with Cambridge Analytica and why it was so devastating. So to recap, there were 270,000 users who took a quiz. They took a quiz that was provided by an app that was on the Facebook platform, but the app was built by a third party, which users agreed to. And then that third party took that data, even though it was from Facebook, and used it on somewhere else. So point being, in the past 20, 30 years, it's led us to this situation where a third party needs to collect all of the data, and it's unclear, and because it's theirs and not Facebook's, they get to do whatever they want. Anti-pattern number 6, unclear data ownership. So let's recap again. We got here because technology with good intentions is led us to all of these situations. We wanted to build better and better products, but as a result, these are all the anti-patterns that got derived. So therefore, these are all of the things we need to reevaluate and re-examine before we can truly get a grasp on privacy. So things like, okay, inference without consent. Maybe we need to ask people, I'm going to do this thing with your data. Are you cool with it? Lack of transparency, for example, it's like, by the way, this is exactly what's happening with your data. Here are some controls to, checkbox, yes, I want this data to be transferred here. I want this data to be manipulated in this way. For black box algorithms, maybe let's not use machine learning for everything. Or use better algorithms or better statistical methods that actually have proven track records of, not garbage in, garbage out, or at least we know how the garbage is getting manipulated. And then in terms of things like unclear data ownership, maybe we want to provide some of that ownership back to the users, some of that control back. And Internet of Integrations, can we not build more services that talk to more services? That would be great. That's all I have. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I think I have about 5 questions left. 5 minutes left. Sorry, not 5 questions. I don't have questions. You have questions. And here's my Twitter again.
Any questions? Move away from this.
Do you have examples of companies actually respecting those?
The question, for those who didn't hear, was, do I have examples of companies respecting those? So one of the things I've started to notice is that, especially with GDPR coming out, there are more and more European companies that have very explicit privacy policies and very explicit text about how data is coming in, how data is coming out. They also have very clear wording. They have some. There was one that had a suggestion of like, you could install Little Snitch, which is a firewall thing. It's like you could block all of the outbound access from this app, and we would not care. And I'm like, that's great. This data is not flying elsewhere. I know it's all local on my system. I know what it's doing locally. So there's a few examples, not a ton, but I think there's going to be more coming out.
Have you seen a shift in how end users perceive these problems in the past few years? Like, do they care?
I have started seeing people caring more. I'll be quite honest, for those of us in the privacy research community, events like Cambridge Analytica took us by surprise because we were not expecting a major shift for another 5 years. So the fact that that happened in the past few years and has kickstarted a lot of questioning and a lot of the general public asking, why is this happening? What's going on? It's actually great for us because now we can be like, we need to build better controls and get a better handle to the situation. But we were not expecting this to happen for another 5 years. Thank you. Let's do it down here.
Do you know if there is any research in how the explicit consent from the users should be taken effectively? Because users tend to click on, just whatever is presented to them.
That is a very good question. That is a very open question and still a developing research question. I don't have good answers for that. I do know a lot of my colleagues or my former colleagues in my research lab are working on that kind of thing. But unfortunately, I don't have any good answers. I'm hoping it improves in the next 5 years. Yeah.
In terms of GDPR and the other privacy regulations coming down the pike, do you think there's an acceleration of this effort coming?
I would say so. I think from the folks I talk to and the folks I interact with in the community, there is a growing, okay, we're privacy nerds, privacy engineering nerds, so we talk about this all the time. But I think there is a growing interest and from a lot of different folks about, okay, this is clearly becoming a more important issue. So I would suspect more and more companies are going to try and be more transparent in the future. The problem is that, and I didn't really cover this in my talk, is that a lot of the technology and a lot of the stuff that has been built now is really hard to retrofit. So if you remember, like the mantra, the rule, build security from the start, don't retrofit security. I think we're in the age of, you have to build privacy from the start. You cannot retrofit privacy, and that's the situation we're grappling with today.
Great talk, and thanks for presenting. Is confidentiality synonymous with privacy? Just curious to see if there's a difference or what the connection is between the two.
That is a very nuanced answer, a nuanced question, and I'm happy to talk about that after the talk because I know I will spend another 20 minutes talking about that. So find me after the talk. If you didn't know, I'm staff and a presenter, so I'll be wandering around through the venue for the rest of the day. So if you find me and you want to chat about this, feel free. I also have this crazy bad data earring, so pretty easy to spot. So feel free to have longer discussions with me during the day.